Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Hello Culture Lunchtime panel session in partnership with the Faculty of Arts and Humanities at Coventry University. My name's Jagdish Patel. I'm a researcher based at Coventry University, researching the story of anti-racism and socially engaged art in Britain. The anti-racist movement in Britain really begins with the first Pan-African conference in 1900. And since this time, which is now over 220 years, Black, Asian, and other people of colour have used art and culture both to address racial injustice in this country, but also to talk about what we experience. So, for example, in the 1940s, we see in Coventry film showings taking place between Indian community and the local trades council. In the 1960s, we see a ska and northern soul movement, and some of the clubs are still going. In the 1970s, we see the evolution of two-tone. And in the 80s, we see the Blk Art movement begin in Coventry. So there's lots of things that happened in this city. And it's a story of people who grew up in this country. And like me, many of them came from the West Midlands and have negotiated their way through both the industrial landscape and the open racism of the 70s. So the title of this event is Coventry, Young, Gifted and Black, which, as many of you will probably know, it's a song that was made famous by Nina Simone in the 70s. It was written for her friend, who's a fellow civil rights campaigner called Lorraine Hansberry, who wrote plays and poetry specifically for the Black community in the States. And in this way, it's the song which is about how people work within an artistic framework, but also are thinking about their communities. So today we're really lucky to have an esteemed panel of three people from Coventry who are quite well established and have been working here for many years. And with them, we're going to explore how they work, but also about the city's social and cultural history. I'm delighted to be joined today by Ayesha Jones, an artist and embedded community producer at the Belgrade Theatre, by Cory Barrett, a design consultant and founder and director of CBGC Creative, aka the Curious Boys and Girls Club, Laura Nyahuye, a creative visionary who's worked across the platform in the Coventry City for many years. So, hello everybody. Before we get started, just a couple of bits of information I need to give you. If you need to use the closed captions, they are available by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of the screen. There is an option to view the full transcript as well by displaying the scrolling subtitles, and we'll be recording this session so you'll be able to watch it again on the Hello Culture website quite soon. As ever, we'll be putting your questions to the panel later on, so please put your questions in the chat and we're going to do our best to get through as many of them as we can today. So let's start straight away. We're going to start with Ayesha. Ayesha, do you want to share your presentation?
Yes. So hello everybody, my name is Ayesha Jones and I'm a documentary photographer, visual artist, and I'm also the audience development officer and one of the embedded community producers at the Belgrade Theatre. So I identify as a dual heritage woman. My mother has come from a Caribbean heritage and my father has come from a Welsh heritage. I'm also dyslexic, and that kind of affects the way I sometimes process information and articulate myself, but hopefully I won't have any brain fog moments today. I also grew up with scoliosis, which is a severe deformity of the spine. And I just wanted to kind of start by kind of sharing my journey into the arts and into community work and kind of how I got to be doing what I'm doing today. And this project that you can see on screen is called Imperfection. And this was really a turning point for me. I went to university and I studied photography, and I initially went in with the desire of becoming a fashion photographer, and I was really obsessed with creating perfect images, and not just behind the camera, but also being in images myself and creating a perfect version of me. And then I got to my final year of university and I started to read a lot of feminist literature, and I was exposed to authors like Bell Hooks, Kat Banyard and Naomi Wolf. And I decided to do my dissertation on the way women are portrayed in fashion photography, with a particular focus on Black women and how that then impacts our perception of female sexuality. And that kind of just led me down a massive rabbit hole. I started to see the way women were portrayed in started to see the way women were portrayed in fashion images and the way we were almost seen as inferior to men. And Black women were not only in positions of inferiority to men, but also white women. And we were also always dressed in animal print clothing, and the connotations behind these images really kind of just made me think how those connotations impacted on our real day relationships with women, with Black women, and how those associations then formed in society. And so I decided to leave fashion photography and go into documentary photography, and I wanted to understand how my own exposures and the things and images I'd been exposed to growing up had impacted on the way I perceived myself and my place in the world. So I turned the camera on myself and I created this documentary project called Imperfection, which explored my own concepts of beauty, body image, family lineage, imposed ideals, and femininity. So as well as documenting my own scoliosis, I also looked at the exposures that my female lineage had gone through. So my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. And through photography, I was able to get a bird's eye view on my life and unpick the exposures that I'd gone through. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. So exposure is so powerful, and kind of understanding our exposures are really crucial in how we move forward and move forward in a conscious way. And because of this, our identities are so unique. So me as a dual heritage woman with a mother from a Caribbean heritage and a father from a Welsh heritage would have completely different exposures than, say, a dual heritage woman who has an English mother and an African father, for example. And I've just added this quote in here: the human brain does not create, it just takes inspiration from what it has been exposed to. And I just really love that quote because it just shows how unique we all are. Like, we can't just sit somewhere and out of nowhere have an idea that has not been influenced by everything that we have gone through or something we have gone through in our past. So this can kind of also be applied to society as well. So like this internal look on my reality as a society, if we really wanted to move forward and not repeat history and not repeat mistakes from the past, we really have to understand where we're coming from, understand our exposures to be able to move forward. So that then led me into a bit of a deeper exploration of my history, and I spent time in Africa and I created this project called Motherland, and this was a kind of a journey to understand my female lineage at a more deeper, in a more deeper way. So I was along this journey, I was learning about Kemetic spirituality, traditional African healing, how to read and write Madu, and also, which is the name for hieroglyphics, the original name for hieroglyphics. And I just generally was trying to understand the culture that my distant ancestors had experienced. But on that journey, it was quite interesting because when I spent time traveling around Africa, it was the first time I was really called a white woman, and I was called it often. And whenever I was out on traveling around on the motorbike with my ex-partner, I'd be called Anna Sara, which means foreigner. So again, my dual identity, I went feeling like there was a place where I could connect with my ancestry, but I was still seen as a foreigner. So this concept of race was really interesting for me to explore. So if you just go on to the next slide. So yeah, when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, I'm really interested in exploring our exposures because our exposures lead to the way we view the world and also our behaviours in the world. And before we can understand somebody else's needs and how to include them or build more diversity, we really need to understand our own and what's led us to where we are. So if that leads on to my role as the embedded community producer at the Belgrade Theatre. And it's been really interesting for me to kind of be in an organisation and be on the ground doing the engagement work, and also seeing how structures impact on the ground engagement. And one of the things we're working on at the Belgrade is how we can build structures and put procedures in place from the top down, because I think at the moment you have to have an authentic approach to diversity and inclusion. There's no more time to kind of just trying to bring people into the building without looking at the way we're working and we're structured as a building. And it's needed. You have to have harmony, and you have to have diversity and complexity within your organisation for it to work and for it to function. And so kind of that's one of the things we're really looking at the moment in the Belgrade Theatre. And I hope that all made sense, and that's the final presentation from me.
Thanks, Ayesha. We haven't given people loads of time, so that even within that short time, there's loads of questions I would like to ask you. I'm going to resist just now, so that we can have a bit more time for conversation at the end. I'm going to ask Cory to speak next, if that's okay.
Hi there, my name's Cory Barrett. I'm a Curious Director and Cultural Leader on the Leadership Programme for Coventry 2021. It wasn't until I became a father that I started to question my life and its relevance in the world. So with a couple of friends, I started a platform called the Curious Boys and Girls Club. Our mantra is to enhance this world and inspire future thought leaders. If you don't recognize your roots, if you don't recognize who you are and where you are from, how can you teach your children and be comfortable with yourself? The film I am about to show you was produced as part of an exhibition to tell our story, share our heritage, and understand our journey. As only knowing this can you understand the men we are today.
In the beginning, there was me. I was rhythm. Life. 2 turntables, 1 mic.
Take no for an answer.
We don't take no for an answer. We play with the serious. We seriously play. We forward think and tip our hat to the past. We imagine like boys, but refine like men. We let the lessons of our youth influence our future. We are creators and inquisitors. We We are curators and inquisitors. We are curators and inquisitors. We are intriguingly what? We are curators and inquisitors. We are intriguingly intuitive. We are curiously creative. We are the Curious Boys Club.
Go.
We are curiously creative. We are curiously creative. We are the Curious Boys Club.
Do all this, we trying to make a business out of this, man. We ain't trying to, you know what I'm saying, affiliate ourselves with them fake ass A&Rs and all that. We trying to make our own shit. So that when our children get old, our seeds or whatever, they got something for themselves like that.
We ain't trying to hop in and hop out like quick, you know what I'm saying? We out for the gusto, man, and we gonna keep it raw, you know what I'm saying?
A game of chess is like a sword fight.
Thank you. I am from Coventry, but I'm a global citizen. I love what the world has to offer and see opportunity in everything we do. I'm inspired by the curiosity of my 2 children, and that drives me to want to create a curious environment for them to grow up in, full of wonder and opportunity. My background is in graphic design, but it's fashion, retail, where my career and experience was developed. Working for brands such as Topshop, Topman, Liberty, COS, Bally, Gap, and Tiffany in New York. It's with this experience and interest that has seen me work on some projects, especially relating to Coventry and the leadership program, where we are in a process of creating a fashion hub in partnership with Fargo and Cov Uni, which will launch in May with a pop-up shop supporting local-based fashion brands and designers. There'll be 3 events and looking to build a relationship and a connection to establish a fashion creative network in Coventry. Thank you.
Thanks, Cory. That was it's great. I love the way you and both Ayesha are using family snapshots photography. It's such an important part of our existence anyway. Again, I've got loads of questions, but I'm going to resist until Laura's spoken. So Laura, over to you.
Hello, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so really my experience as a Black woman here in the UK, I'm originally from Zimbabwe. I was born and raised there. I moved to the UK straight into Coventry. It's like 20 years now living in Coventry. So I always say I became a Black woman when I came to the UK. I remember sitting in a class, it was in arts because I've always been interested in the arts growing up. I grew up with creativity around me. So it was quite natural for me to expand my horizons and interest coming into this country. So I was in the class and I remember it was full of white people. And I remember being asked by one of the students, Laura, how does it feel being the only Black person in this room? At this point, this was not something that was occupying my mind. From where I come from, I was exposed to different people from different backgrounds. So color, skin color was never an issue for me. I was raised to believe that there was something inside of me that I can equally give. So this narrative of being Black and white or brown, it really formulated as I was navigating my way around the UK. So then it gave birth to something that then became an organization. If we go on to the next slide, that is Maokwo, the organization that I run now. I'm a founder of Maokwo, and it's an arts organization. For me, I see it as a platform. Calling it an organization, it's a language that we need to use. However, I see it as a conduit to do something to do with the minoritized groups, artists that we work with, in order for them to amplify their voices that they already have, to find platforms for them to potentially work in places like the Belgrade Theatre, Herbert Art Gallery, outside Coventry and beyond, be international artists. How can their voices be equally heard? So that's what we do within Maokwo. So Black Future is a project that we produced together with Belgrade Theatre, and it brought in the young people that we work with, the young artists who have really amazing visions and dreams, and they are not all of them are interested in the Black story. So how do we amplify this mixed bag of voices? Some are interested in the Blackness, some are interested in comic books. How do we then give them or help them to be on those platforms that the narrative can potentially change? So as I'm speaking to you right now, I would like to give you like a live example of, as I was coming into this meeting, I'm coming from a conversation that was quite difficult. And it's a conversation as a leader in the cultural sector that I need to have maybe on a continual basis, where I have to carry this emotional labor of sometimes explaining the value of our existence as Black creatives in a community that has been set up, a system that has been set up somehow to resist the value that we bring to the table. So if we go on to the next spoken word piece that I wrote as a result of, again, continual frustration as to, I'm a migrant, I wasn't born and raised here. I had to learn this structure via my children, via the women that I work with in communities. I've been working in community and arts since 2007, and very curious and surprising to see women and really gifted humans who are still suffering and they don't feel part of the community. Anyway, to cut the long story short, let's go on into that piece that I wrote as a result of just thinking on it. What does that mean to me? Do I come into this space of like, really shutting my value and just give up? Because that's quite something that could potentially happen in order to look after self and health. Yeah, if we may play that piece, please. No, I will not apologize. Does it offend you? Don't clip my wings. Category this, category that, ethnicity, Blackness, whiteness, colorless. Don't clip my wings. I have no desire to fit in. No apologies. Born to be free, born to be me, born to thrive, not strive. Don't clip my wings. Category A, category B, ability, disability. Hey, I was born to be free, born to be me, no desire to fit in. I am me. For this, I will not apologize. So what are we looking at as an organization? What are we really desiring to see? We are desiring to see Black young creatives in the leadership, in places of leadership. We are working with organizations, local organizations like the Belgrade Theatre who are supporting us, Happy Art Gallery, where we are, the Coventry University, where we are actually, we've created a program that is, we are currently working with 5 young people that we are supporting to integrate into exhibitions that are currently going on, curators, programs, and they are also involved in the Black Arts Movement forum that we are working with Coventry University. And all of it is working on the ground, from the ground up, in order to potentially see a shift. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I think you probably can't see the chat, but I think I share the sentiments in the chat. The way you speak and the way you present the work is so powerful. So thanks. I'm going to start the conversation with a couple of questions to everybody. But before we do, I just want to remind the audience once again that if you have questions, put them into the chat, into the panel, and we're going to try and go through as many as we can today in the time we have. So the first question I want to ask the panel is to pick up on something that you've all said in your presentation, which is thinking about your relationship to the present and the past and your ancestry. And listening to Laura talk about the resistance to the value that we bring. I want to start a question because I want to remind people of something that C.L.R. James said when he arrived in London in 1932 from Trinidad, and Trinidad is one of the smaller Caribbean islands. But he said to the English people when he arrived, we are an international people, and therefore we're particularly open. And I think he was making people aware that he was shocked when he arrived in this country how small-minded some of the people here were. And it's a way of reversing the idea that we come from backward places and get educated here. And actually we bring a lot of value here. So I want to really ask the question, what do you think we bring as a community from Africa and the Caribbean to Coventry, which has helped this city develop in the way it has? Start with Ayesha.
I was saying this earlier, this is such a tricky question to answer because it's everything. Like Blackness is where it started. Like everything comes from the continent, everything comes from motherland in the first place. So it's like, even to say what are we bringing back now, it's like even the foundation of this country is coming from Black culture. So, and again, it comes down to that exposure and that knowledge to be exposed to this. Because for me, my mother, she set up a Black charity when I was growing up. She supported Black families. She studied Black history. She had a wall full of books of history pre-slavery. So I was exposed to that kind of information from a young age. So it's like a no-brainer for me. So, but a lot of people, even Black people themselves, don't have that exposure growing up. So they don't even know where their original roots or where the original roots of humanity are coming from. And so it's a really hard question to answer, and I don't want to answer it inauthentically and kind of like have like a fluffy answer, but it just, yeah, again, it comes down to we all just need to be exposed to the real roots of life, and I'm just going to leave it there. Sorry.
Good. Cory, do you want to provide an answer?
Yeah, I mean, we can state the obvious: colourful, flamboyance, cuisine, culture, swagger, workforce, labour. That has all contributed to the hard work and ethic of this landscape. But honestly, it's not enough. It's all superficial. We could really benefit each other if there were more discussions like this and leaders like us in the decision-making roles, not just on the peripheral, making low-key but important impact, but trying to support the communities. This should be a wider impact. So I think there's so much more that we can bring, but we haven't been able to give all of us ourselves. The tokenistic and the typical things that I mentioned before, is everything that we brought, but we can and we should be doing a lot more.
Thank you. Sorry, Laura.
We bring a lot of value, and there's this insight that we bring. I'm talking from a migrant background point of view. It's because I'm exposed to this culture that I've been born into. So coming in and really observing the way the culture is, you can see the gaps. And for me, it's about togetherness. I always call it Mushandira Pamwe. That's quite a long word, but I grew up in a place where families, and whether the elderly man or woman, I'm walking somewhere and they see me, they know my face, they would ask me, what are you doing? So I'm answerable to a lot of people. There's this, the village, there's a saying that, yeah, I've forgotten that, but there's this togetherness that we bring that is called Mushandira Pamwe. So coming in, we don't see a lot of that in this culture. So how do we then somehow practice it, implement it in a way that we can? We are not saying that we're going to be friends with every neighbor around us, but that way of thinking that we are not here to destroy each other, but we are stronger together. We are not the other. There's so much value in these layers, in this body, this human body that we carry. And it's not about the skin color. It's not about the tone. It's me, it's you. What do you have? Let's come together. Let's eat. Let's cook some salsa together. Let's have that traditional dish together. Let's talk and really bring a better community, because even the political issues that we face would not be so strong if we as a community come together and really work on a level that is appreciative of what we are bringing to the table. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And I think you've touched on something that's really important, because I know my family came to this country from rural India, and if you come from a rural country, a rural village, you know the value of interdependence. You know how you have to look after each other. You know how to survive by supporting each other and all that type of thing. And those are the values that we brought, I think, to the country. And I want to pick up on that as an issue, as that's important in art, and ask you something about and it's implicit in the title when we say Young, Gifted and Black, that when the Americans were speaking, they were talking about the relationship between care and the politics of liberation and art and how those things are interconnected. And the American Civil Rights Movement is particularly good, I think, in thinking about the issues of care and love in a political way, if you listen to Martin Luther King and other people speak. And it's not, it's a care and love as a political issue rather than as a romantic issue. And I think if you think about how the two-tone movement develops, or how the Black Art Collective from the Lancaster Polytechnic develops, alongside the anger is the issue of how they look after each other, I think. And there's something in that I think that we need to probably talk about more. And I know I've been to meetings with you, Laura, when you've talked about how you help young people develop through your mentoring, and you talk about some of those issues, but the language is lost in the outcomes and the conversations about outcomes and outputs and all that type of stuff. And the institutions really don't get that. And I wanted you to think about, well, how important is this issue of looking after and care and helping communities develop in the artistic work you do? Start with Cory this time. You're on mute, sorry.
Typical. For me, care is, it's hugely important in terms of creative practice, even more so now that I'm older. I think as a youngster, you don't think about it. You just trying to be creative and get something out there, especially within the corporate worlds, that you're just trying to churn things out. There has to be a little bit of care consideration that goes into it, because you're trying to tell a story, whether it's a brand message or not. But for me now, as a self-employed and just trying to build my own practice and going on this leadership program and things, working in the communities, and you're having to understand the different people that you're working with, and so you have to take a bit of care and consideration in terms of who you're delivering to, who you're sharing with, who you're communicating with, and also my own care and mental health and struggles and everything else. That has to come into it, and then you can really connect with other people more authentically from that point on. And for me, that's where the care kind of comes into it for a creative point of view, is building on those lived experiences and being able to kind of share that and communicate it within whatever art form or expressive way that you choose to do.
Interesting. Laura, do you want to go next?
Yeah, the issue of care is quite an important one in terms of leadership. Again, lived experience. It is the value, like how do we value or the organizations that we can potentially partner with in the cultural sector? How are they really valuing lived experience? And as you leading as a lived experienced leader, what care is in place? It's kind of like you're in the front line and you are dealing with all these conversations that are going on. What care is in place in your organization? What care is in place in that organization? So for example, for us, it's something that we identified quite earlier on, because again, it's coming from the place of knowing the lived experience. So we have a counselor, a psychologist in our team who supports us as we are navigating these conversations. So I could have a very bad, maybe conversation with an organization, but we have this person, the counselor in place that I can then talk to and really unpick that conversation. However, this is a practice that I believe we could really have running through different organizations. Where is the space for us to think, and who is there in the leader's role that I can call on to, maybe not necessarily someone who is from my organization. I've gone through something quite chunky and something really deep. Who is there? Who is available to talk to say, hey, this is what's going on. I'm not too sure how to navigate that. That's one element of care. And then we come to the care of the expectancy of being this machine that is constantly producing stuff, because we are creative people, and yet there's a lot of creativity inside of us. But how do we then produce in a way that is actually like, this is one project, but how far is that project going to go? Do we necessarily have to continually produce one project after the other, after the other, after the other? Where is the care in that? What impact is that one project going to have, and how can we actually stretch it in a way that we see the value, celebrate the value in years and years to come? But how are we going to bring this to the young people? You know, the young people that we are working with, we are guiding them in this, in navigating that culture of constant being on this hamster's wheel of constant producing. We are supporting them. But I believe that this is a broader conversation that we can, you know, when we work together and talk about this and really unpick it, it could help us in self-care, mental health, because there's a lot of layers that impact on our mental health in this sector. Yeah.
Thank you. Ayesha, do you want to think about that?
Yeah, just picking up from what Laura said, so much good stuff in what both Laura and Cory's just said. But again, I think in this society, we've gone so far in one direction, and I like to speak about it as kind of like this duality. I call it the feminine and the masculine, but that's not necessarily man and woman. It's just the duality of energies, whether we all have that in ourselves. So I feel like the one side of that duality is go, go, go. We need to get it done. We need to be active. We need to be doing. We need to be producing. We need to be blah, blah, blah on that treadmill. And the other side of that is the receptive. It's the rest. It's the intuition. It's the creativity. It's the flow. And you need both of those in creation. And so in the organization, sometimes I feel like that, you know, we're very good at being on the go and being productive and getting everything done. but there's less importance or focus placed on that rest and intuition and receptivity. And as creative people and organizations, that is key. Like, you know, you go out into nature and you have that epiphany, you have that idea, or you connect the dots, you know that, okay, well, this is how I'm going to address this situation. I'm no longer in a place of stress, so I'm able to process. I think the last year has definitely like raised that issue even more. People have been on furlough, they've been able to have that rest, and they've been able to come to certain realizations about the direction they want to go in, or how we need to move forward as a society. I think that time of rest has really sped up a lot of issues which have been under the surface for a long time. So yeah, care is so important. It comes down to that harmony again, and if we want to build systems and structures and institutions that work, that function, and that last, we need to have harmony. We need to have both the action and the rest. And there's studies as well, you know, there's studies that show that the less hours you work, the more productive you actually become. So it doesn't even make sense from that point of view. I think we just become so ingrained in a certain way of thinking that it's hard to kind of undo that. But again, conversations like this, and you know, I'm sure over the next months there'll be more and more of this kind of stuff coming up. So yeah, just reiterating what both Cory and Laura have said, really. Rest is very important and care is very important, and we should be focusing on that.
Thank you. There's loads of different things to unpack from what everyone said. I've just got a Fitbit, so I know how little rest I'm having officially. There's a lot. We haven't got time to unpack it. So what I'm going to, and I haven't got time to ask the third question either. So I'm going to go to some of the questions that the audience are asking and feed them back to you. One from Hardish Work, who says, "Thank you for the fantastic presentations and provocations. It will be interesting to learn what resistance you experience as Black creatives and the impact of this resistance on your professional and development and health and well-being." Does anybody want to answer that? Cory?
Yeah. For me, I didn't really feel any resistance growing up so much. I think at school I did. You know, I think it's slightly beaten out of you, creativity, and just trying to be in a more of a structural routine. But workplace actually opened things up for me. I don't feel it was because I was Black. It just felt it was creative. I think that's what Coventry gave me, I suppose, because I grew up around white, Asian, Black, mixed race, diverse environment, and so I didn't really see myself as being different. I just thought I was creative. I thought I would add value. But I think coming back and being older, I felt more resistance as I'm older, you know, coming more into the art world from, you know, the corporate retail structure, because it's hard to break into. But I think having that presence of mind just to keep going and, you know, knocking down doors previously from the corporate environment, you learn very quickly to adjust and to adapt. And that's one thing that we've had to do, you know, whether you're Black, Asian, or white, female, you know, you have to adapt and you find your way. Unfortunately, you know, you can't always just be this person or this woman. You know, you have to adapt, and that's what I've done over the last few years, especially to try and keep going, to keep fighting for myself, but also for the people that are going to follow me.
Cool, thank you. Laura, do you want to say anything?
So the resistance, it's more of really closed doors. By closed doors, I mean really hedging, as in, okay, I remember really wanting to push my artistic practice as to, okay, whom do I tend to, who is it in Coventry that, you know, can possibly support this? So knocking on doors and having conversations that really maybe do not produce like any fruits. So it felt like there were some hedges around how do you really navigate the creative industry in Coventry. So there was that. So lack of information, and eventually you realize that no, actually it's not just being informed, it's to do with there was that clicking groups that were more clicky, they work together well, so they stay in that group. So how do you go into that group and introduce your own creativity? So because of these closed doors, the resistance, so not only in Coventry, but there were different places that I would push. You want to get in, you are explaining about ABCD. So because of that, it requires a lot of energy, it requires a lot of mental strength, bearing in mind that I'm a mother, I'm a single mother who has 2 girls. So you have that. I migrated, I have like family back home that I need to think about. So all this, it has its own impact on your health, on the mental strength. It requires a lot of emotional labor. And in turn, if you're not careful, you end up in Caledon, you end up breaking down. You end up on pills, you end up, all sorts of things can potentially happen. I would say the thing that really helped me to carry on is my faith, because I'm a Christian. So that's what really helped me to carry on. And also, I believe it is the resilient spirit that I was taught from where I come from my parents, of there must be something, I have something to give. Surely there must be a place in Coventry, there must be a place in the world for this. So otherwise, I believe that's how we lose a lot of amazing creatives, and some have moved away from Coventry, they've gone out to find some better pastures. Yeah, so that really stagnates as well. The professional development, I'm just looking at that, it hinders that professional development. Thank you.
Rather than just answer the same question, Ayesha, I have a slightly different question, which develops what Laura's been saying from someone called Melissa, I think. Could you talk a little bit more about the Black-led arts organisation in Coventry and how you feel about the lack of organisations? How would you imagine the city otherwise from your own perspective and practices?
I feel like Laura would be best placed to answer that question, to be honest. And I had an answer prepared for your last question, if that's
Oh, answer the last question then quickly, and we'll go to Laura.
Just because just as a dual heritage woman, I think my experience is a bit different, because I've, you know, I relate to white culture because of my father's side of the family, and I can navigate that world, and I'm exposed to the Black culture because of my mother, and I've navigated that world. So it's almost like sometimes it's easier for me to be the poster girl because I can operate in those spaces, but I also have brown skin and a brown face, and those opportunities aren't necessarily as readily available to women who have darker skin than me, and navigating that is very tricky, because there's almost this sense of guilt as well, like it shouldn't be me in this place, this should be a dark-skinned Black woman doing this work, why am I the one in this? And then on the other side, having, you know, sometimes just going back to if there's been any kind of blockages or things, because, you know, as an artist, there's just, it's something, sometimes it's not like a tangible thing, it's a feeling, or it's a way people talk to you, and you don't really know why you're being treated that way, or kind of and spoken to. It's like, is this because I'm a woman? Is this because I'm dual heritage? Is this because I look younger than my years? And you kind of you develop some kind like a self-doubt because of that. I think, like, for example, me turning up to a photography shoot, a project I was working on with City of Culture, and the lady we were photographing, I was standing there with my camera, and she was like, "Oh, so when's the photographer going to get here?" And I was like, "Oh, well, yes, that's me. I know you don't expect to be someone who looks like me," for example. So I think little situations like that kind of build up over time, and you kind of have this sense of, oh, I'm not really the one to be in this space, or the one to be doing this thing. And so sometimes you can kind of hold yourself back rather than having that confidence, but, oh, yeah, I'm going to go for this and I can do this. I think those experiences kind of add up.
I think in some ways you probably have a slightly more difficult position because it's harder to be in and push for change from inside as it is from outside, and to keep the links between the two is actually quite a skill, I think, to do it well, which you have done. So that is quite a difficult position to be in, I think.
There is that, yeah, there is that kind of conflict, because on the one hand, I'm like an activist and an artist, and I want to just do my thing, and but then on the other side, I'm in an institution, an organization, and I want to, you know, do things well and in the right way. And so there's this push and pull sometimes. And sometimes going into spaces as well, people see me as the Belgrade, and I'm like, no, I'm Ayesha. Like I'm into this stuff too. Like, this is where I want change. But they kind of, you have to kind of build up that trust because you are going in as the face of an organisation.
Thank you. So Laura, I don't know if you want to answer this question about the importance of a Black-led arts organisation in Coventry, and that is a really important question, because one of the reasons why I think Two Tone was successful is they set up their own business, and they created their own infrastructure, the same as the Black Arts Movement in a way. And it's an ongoing question in the art sector. How do Black communities create an autonomous art and not dependent on this white elitist infrastructure? Go on.
So the importance of it is really for the younger generation, and not forgetting the current generation, you know, us and those who are coming into this industry, to see someone like them, because otherwise we'll have just a generation that is dying, really, as in they feel like, oh, okay, I don't belong, I don't have anything to say, because so you find that even like with the young people that we work with and other young people, you see that there is an impact that there's an impact around having someone who looks like them in their school, in their experiences in school. So if they have a Black teacher, and they always have like stories like, oh yeah, we had a Black teacher and this is what happened, and things changed for them. So there's something really important in seeing someone who looks like you in this industry, whatever industry that, you know, we are going into. So that's why we have this leadership program whereby we're saying the young people, how can we really just push them in and start creating like a generation of young people who look like us in leadership. And also there's that, I think there's a question that came up that I'm thinking about, like it will tie in well. It's about authenticity. It's about being yourself, because if we don't see those leaders who look like us, we end up toning down who we really are, you see, because we need to confirm to what's there, what's already existing. So how can I fit into this? How can I fit into this? So for us, it's been a journey, and it continues to be a journey where we are creating partnership, but what does that partnership really mean to us? Is it saving us? How authentic is it? Is it saving them as a partner? How do we really come together and make it work, make it real for us, and appreciate the value, who we are, what we are bringing to the table? So authenticity, having young leaders who look like us, who look like you, whether it's a white person, a Black person, Indian, whatever the color of the skin, it encourages authenticity.
Thank you. We have maybe a question, one last question really quickly. Wonderful presentation, Ayesha, thank you. I love the idea we need to understand our own needs before being able to reach out effectively. Do you want to, each of you, talk very quickly about how you can do that, meet your own needs before you reach out effectively? It's an important point, I think. We have 1 minute, so it'd be a very swift answer.
I think it comes down to understanding yourself and knowing what you like and what you need. So for me, I know that if I'm stressed, I need to be out in nature, and that helps, me build my cup up so then I can give to other people. So yeah, understanding yourself, where you're coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's 1 o'clock and I need to stop, so I need to stop you. I won't be able to ask.
We want more.
I know, this is the problem, because there's so much you could have talked about this time. All I can say is thank you everyone for attending. We've been cut short by the time. Thank you very much. Well, I want to thank our guests on behalf of the audience, which is Ayesha, Cory and Laura, and also want to thank the Faculty of Arts and Humanities at Coventry University for commissioning this programme, and our curators, Laura Ratnjana and Craig Ashley. We're out of time, unfortunately, but there's a few more events that Hello Culture are running today, which is partly why we have to stop. 2 p.m. there's something called Coventry Are Our Friends Electric? How far has the digital democratized art in our world? We are creating inclusive, accessible and safe. And at 4 p.m. we have another panel called Come Together. Who owns Coventry? Whose space is it anyway? And how do we redefine place, space and identity? So that's it for today. I'm sorry. If you have questions, I think email us or send a message and we'll try and sort of get back to you if we can. Thank you.